Progress.
About how the Erev Rish Chodesh and Rish Chodesh time, when the moon is dark, or it's only a point, that's not a darkness that shows on lack or lower level, but it's like the level of what is closer to the essence, just like the level of Yira, because it's so close to the essence, therefore it is dark. The same thing, the Levana, the moon, when it's close to the sun, is a level of darkness. Just like also a student, when he's busy receiving from the Rav, he cannot be operating his seichel, he cannot be using his intellect. So that's the time period of Erev Rosh Chodesh, when the moon is totally gone, and even Rosh Chodesh, when it's only in a point. So now he's going to explain about further how this has to do with Yitzchak. Beforehand, we brought down that it says that the Zohar says Vayikra la'er yoim za Avraham, the level of Avraham, which is Chesed, which is Balashpa to the Zulas, to the other person. That is called light, because that's the whole point of light, like we've been saying throughout the Maimer. The point of light is revelation, whereas Yitzchak is the level of concealment. Why is it concealment? Not a negative concealment, but it's Vayikra Yitzchak. L'chayshach kara laila is a Yitzchak, because it's talking about a higher level, a level that is beyond revelation. So now the Rebbe is going to address that and connect it with Mashiach's times and its connection with Yitzchak. Ois Hey on page Yud Tes, line 6. We still need to understand that a loss and love Yom Rudavka Yitzchak Yata Vinu. When Mashiach comes, we say that specifically and only Yitzchak will we tell him, you are our father. The whole Gemara goes through a whole thing about why Avram not, or why Yaakov not, etc. But Yitzchak will be called our father. In other words, Yitzchak will be the primary level connected with Mashiach's times. The movement seemingly it's not understood. The Afshin and Achoyshach Humayla. Though the level of darkness, which is the level of Yitzchak, is and has an advantage because it's the revelation of the essence, still in all, since in regards to that which is below, it's considered darkness. How can you say Yitzchak is our father? There's no revelation below. It's going to be concealed. If it's concealed, how can this be Mashiach's times? So he says in line 12, third paragraph on the page, this will be prefaced by understanding the idea of Shabbos and the question that we asked in the beginning of the Maimer, and the reason that Shabbos is not called the head of the week like Rosh Chodesh and Rosh Hashanah, because we said that Shabbos, from it, all the days of the week receive their brachas, so therefore Shabbos should also be called the head because it includes all the days of the week, just like Rosh Chodesh includes all the days of the month, and Rosh Hashanah is the head that includes all the days of the year. The idea behind this is the it's known concerning the idea of Shabbos, all of the refinement, all of the sparks that we elevate during the 6 days of the week. So on Shabbos is when they finally completely become elevated to godliness. Even though we've refined the sparks in the rest of the week, still in all, on Shabbos it gets its ultimate elevation in godliness. But Tzarech Lahavim, we need to understand, and that's the idea of Shabbos, is the elevation of the world's Aliyas Olam, as we say, goes on in Shabbos. Tzarech Lahavim, we need to understand that the general service of a person is an avodah that's based on intellect and reason. And also the self-sacrifice in Kriyas Shema is through prefacing meditation. So even when we're dealing in Kriyas Shema with the self-sacrifice that says that limser nafshe be'echad, it says a person needs to be giving up his life and his whole being in the word echad, which transcends intellect, but that itself is based on a foundation of intellect. That itself comes as a result of the meditation. Ubefrat, and even more so, intellect is crucial in our avodah when we need to influence the other within us. So the neshama should be able to do what it's supposed to do to affect its effect. The seichel is there has to be the enclothing of the rational part of the godly soul in the intellect of the natural soul. Shehi mitzias davar. The intellect of the natural soul is already an entity for itself. So being that that's the case, and that's a crucial part of avodas habirurim, the avodah shal pitam v'das, elevating the nefesh habahamis, bring the nefesh habahamis on board. So intellect seemingly shows that's mitzias davar, that there's an entity other than Hashem. How is it possible for it to be completely part of godliness? How can it become completely elevated on Shabbos, that this thing that is an entity, which is a separate identity and a separate thing, is now elevated in godliness? The idea behind this is line 25, the Misha Tarach Erev Shabbos, someone who put in effort. On Erev Shabbos, Yochel b'Shabbos. The simple thing means, if you prepare before Shabbos, you prepare the food, you buy the ingredients, etc., etc., so then you'll have what to eat on Shabbos, because Shabbos you can't go out and start tilling the land and doing the harvest, etc., etc. Everything has to be prepared beforehand. Everything has to be cooked beforehand. So spiritually, this means after the service of refining the sparks during the 6 days of the week, so then on Shabbos, the level of Atik, the inner part of Kesser, which is the level of the light, comes down. So once we do what we are supposed to do, we are Misha Tarach Erev Shabbos. We did our work on Erev Shabbos. So now there's an automatic result on Shabbos that the level of Einig, like it says, V'karosel Shabbos, Einig Shabbos, the level of Tainug, that the level of Atik comes down. Because it's the level of Atik, it's not our entity that's doing it, it's not our intellect now that's doing it, it's something that's coming from above. Therefore, therefore, the refined things that we refined, the sparks that we elevated, become refined in a second refinement. Chassidus explains, it's like, for example, when you're refining precious metals and removing it from the ground, etc. So first you take off the very coarse clods of earth that are surrounding it. Then there's a secondary process of refinement where it needs to be brought to a high level of heat, etc., to remove any impurities and so on. The same thing in the birurim, in the spiritual birurim, it's brought down. There's birur rishon and birur sheni. The first birur to get off all the coarseness that we do during the week when we do our avodas habirurim, and then on Shabbos comes the birur sheni. In Kabbalah terms, or Chassidus terms, this is the level of Shem Ma, the level of Atzilus, that afterwards takes what Shem Ban, the level that came up from Bia, through the Birurim, and Ma gives it a further Birur. In Chlolim, they become part, Belakus, top of page Chaf. Now he says that there's a little bit technical things, when exactly it takes place. There are different stages of this. This means Shabbalel Shabbos during Friday night. It's drawing down the level of the delight of Atik Yoimin into the sphere of Malchus. What does that mean in more understandable terms? That's the delight that's felt above from the refinements that Malchus did throughout the week. That we know Malchus, we say its legs descend into the opposite of life, Ragla Yordis Mavis, and it's descending there into things that are not Kedusha, not life, to elevate the sparks. And now there's the delight of Hashem that shines on Friday night into Malchus for Malchus's work in elevating the sparks. And because of that delight of the Eibishter that comes now down into Malchus, Through that, those refined sparks become subsumed and elevated into the level of Hashem's delight. On Shabbos day, the elevation is even higher. And more specifically, this corresponds to the 3 periods on Shabbos, the 3 meals. These are the 3 meals of Shabbos. The meal of Friday night is the meal of the holy apple orchard. It has to do with the level of Aracham. Was Eir Ampin Vatik Kadisham and Zeir Ampin, which are the spheres of Atzilus, and the holy level of Atik, which is higher than Arachampin. Asin Lasada Bado, they come to assist her. So he explains what this is. V'hainum shebechinas Zeir Ampin Mevarer, says bechinas Hamalchus, the level of the Midos, which is the level which is immediately above Malchus, or the spheres in general of Atzilus. That refines the level of Malchus. And how does it do so? Through the level of Atik assisting the Zeir Ampin. Then there's Sudas Yom Shabbos and Shabbos day meal, who Sudas Atik Kadisha. That's the meal of Atik. Pnimius Akeser, the level of delight. Shu Inyan Aliyas Malchus. It's the elevation, ascent of Malchus to a higher level, all the way into the level of delight. And in the third meal, it comes down the essential delight that's not even felt. It's so high and so so much bittul that it's not something that we actually sense. It's like not feeling even that we're alive, even though we're definitely alive, but we're so involved in life that we're not even aware of being alive. And we're not even aware of the delight and enjoyment of being alive. It's similar to the revelation of Mashiach's times that there has no eating and drinking, meaning eating and drinking indicates a delight which is something that's recognizable and felt and sensed. But since this is such a high level of delight that's beyond being sensed, so therefore it's similar to Mashiach's times, which is a delight also beyond our senses brought to us by eating and drinking. That's why the 3 meals of Shabbos correspond to the 3 forefathers of Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Shesudas Leil Shabbos, Keneged Avram, Shinyon Yamshach. The meal of Friday night, that corresponds to Avram Avinu. That's the idea about drawing down. It's the drawing down of Zeir Ampin to refine the level of Malchus. The Sudas Yom Shabbos Keneged Yitzchak, Shinyon Halah, and the meal of Shabbos day corresponds to Yitzchak, because Yitzchak is about the idea of elevation and ascent. Because that's the idea of Gvura. Gvura is about rising up, the idea of fire. Allah is B'chinas HaMalchus, B'chinas HaTika Kadisha, the ascent of Malchus into the level of Atik. B'china Niles Yosef B'chinas HaTainuk, in a much higher level than Tainuk, than what comes down initially at Friday night. Even though Friday night it's a chesed of Avram, it's a drawing down, like Avram was giving and drawing down below. The Suda Shlishis in the third meal of Shabbos, he connected Yaakov, corresponds to Yaakov Avinu. Nachla B'li Mitzarim. It says that when Yaakov Avinu was told about the promise of Eretz Yisrael, he was promised Nachla B'li Mitzarim. He wasn't like Avram, that he was told something that had to do with limitations. Like by Avram Avinu, it said Nahar Pras will be this. The Euphrates will be this border and such and such. Yaakov just said, "Faras Yam of Akeda with Spoin of Anegba." You'll just spread out. In other words, an inheritance, an apportionment without any boundaries, which spiritually indicates through Tainuga Asmi Abilti Murgish, that is the essential delight that is not even sensed and felt. So now getting back to the topic of Shabbos not being the head of the week. So he says, top of page Chafal. Because of the drawing down of the light in the day of Shabbos in general. Especially in the third meal of Shabbos. That's the idea of drawing down the essential delight that's beyond even being sensed. That's totally beyond the chain order of descent of the worlds. In the Yom HaShabbos Shabbos day, the whole day of Shabbos is beyond the chain order of descent. As beyond the idea of time. Where does it express this idea that it's beyond the idea of time? That's the reason why every single week we say Hayom Yom Rishon. Today is the first day. Hayom Yom Sheni. Today is the second day. Though many days passed from the beginning of creation, still in all, the new week we count again. First day, second day. How come? Because Shabbos cut off the whole system. Shabbos is beyond time. So the entire idea of time now stopped on Shabbos. Since Shabbos is beyond time, therefore after Shabbos begins a new count, and as we'll mention later in the Maimer, a higher count. According to this, now will be understood the reason that answers our original question in the Maimer. Why did the Shabbos is not called the head of the week? Rosh Hashanah is called the head of the month and the head of the year. The idea of the word Rosh means the head of something. So though it's on top, it's higher than, but still in all, it's at the very same time, it's associated with them. So Rosh Chodesh, Rosh Hashanah, you can use that term. But Shabbos is higher than time and higher than the chain order of descent. It doesn't have any connection at all to the days of the week. Therefore, it's not called a head. Though we brought earlier from the Zohar that from Shabbos all the days of the week receive their bracha, still in all, it's not in the way of a head in relationship to the rest of the body. What's being drawn down on the Shabbos is not in the chain order of descent. Rather, from it eventually comes down and say the Ishtalshus. It's like the etzim that we spoke about. Now, from the etzim comes out the light. Not that the etzim itself is what illuminates. Similar to what Chazal said, that says, he benched it and he sanctified it. So the Chazal say, what's the benching and the sanctification of Shabbos? With the mon. Though we know that on Shabbos, that created in the spiritual realms the beginning of the mon that would come down every single day of the week following it. On Shabbos a day, the mon did not come down. That's the holiness of Shabbos. Kitre b'mon, on Shabbos the mon does not come down. What comes down on Shabbos is beyond the chain order of descent. Though afterwards it comes down in Seder Ishtalshus. So it's just like the mon. The mon would not come down on Shabbos, though Shabbos was the source of the mon coming down the rest of the days of the week. This means the though because of what comes down the day of Shabbos. The first day and the second day, etc., what we say throughout the week in the Shir Shal Yom, are now higher than the previous week's days, because Shabbos causes that elevation in the rest of the week. Still no on Shabbos day itself. Is beyond the chain order of descent, and therefore we can't call it the head. Afterwards it comes down in the chain order of descent. According to what we said, Shiyom HaShabbos Ulamayl Meseder Shtalshos, that Shabbos is beyond the chain order of descent. Ve'afal Pikein, top of Chav Beis. Nimshach Menu Meseder Shtalshos comes down from it and Seder Shtalshos. Now we're going to understand that Choshech can have that same property. Choshech, even though Choshech is darkness because it's too high to come down, but from the Choshech, or from the essence, like we mentioned before, you can have the revelation of light. Nimtza comes out, even from a level that's beyond the chain order of descent. That's called darkness. Can come down the light and the revelation in the chain order of descent of the worlds. And now we can answer the question we started with this morning. According to this will be understood why when Mashiach comes. We'll say specifically, that you are our father. Though the level of Yitzchak, like we said before, is the closeness. That's because of Hashem's essence. That's called darkness, like we said before. We call him still in all the asid love in the future. This level as well will come down, but in a way of light and revelation lamata, down here below, meaning even the closeness will not, even the darkness will not be, the closeness will not be in a way of darkness, but it will be in a way of light and of revelation, just like from Shabbos can afterwards be translated into the rest of the week into times of revelation. And here he connects it back to the idea of the moon. We said that the disappearing of the moon on Rosh Chodesh and the smallness of the moon on Rosh Chodesh is the level of Chodesh that's higher than Oir. But what's going to happen when Mashiach comes with the moon? There's not going to be any more the moon disappearing. This is why when Mashiach comes, it's going to be again the two great luminaries. Just like it was at the beginning of creation. Like it says, that Hashem made the two great luminaries, and that's the way it was initially, that the moon and the sun were both illuminating. And that's the way it's going to be when Mashiach comes. So, what happened in between? In between, there was what's called miut hayereach. There was the minimization of the moon, that Hashem told the moon to make itself smaller. The it's known, the lessening and the minimization of the moon is the same idea conceptually with the idea of the breaking of the vessels from the world of Tayu. But they're different stages. So he says, why was the moon minimized? To elevate and fix up what occurred because of the breaking of the vessels. He's going to explain right now how that works. Since the breaking of the vessels caused that there should be something other than godliness, and that thing that's other than godliness, now we need to raise up the sparks from there, we need to elevate it. The order of repairing this is through the minimization of the moon. We tell the moon, also the level of Malchus, go and lessen yourself, decrease yourself. Just like the moon was in the state of a receiver now from the sun, instead of being a powerful luminary like the sun. And the same thing, Malchus becomes now a receiver instead of being a giver, a mashpia. And Malchus now has to go, it has to descend to the worlds of Bri Yitzirasiyah, so they should be able to be the idea of refining the sparks. So that's the connection between the Shviras HaKelim and the minimization of the moon. But that is only necessary while we're doing the Berurim. But when Mashiach comes, line 21, when Mashiach comes at the conclusion of the refining of the sparks, that Malchus will not have to be anymore a receiver from the spheres above it, and in the similar vein, the moon won't have to receive from the sun. There'll be the two great luminaries, and not only will Malchus and the moon be equal to the sun, He said him as even more so. Shebechinas hamalchus tis'ala l'mayla yoser lias eches chayla teres baila. That malchus will rise up to be higher. That the woman of valor, which is the level of malchus, will be the crown of her husband, meaning above her husband, above the mashpia. The makabel will now be higher than the mashpia. How come? Because malchus was involved with tayu, and sharei tayu kadum l'tikun. We know tayu preceded, is higher than tikun. Ki shem samach gimel ma'al shem ma shem sag has to do the name of Hashem, the equals 63. That's the world of tayu. Shem ma has to do with tikun, with atzilus. So shem sag is higher than shem ma. Tayu is higher than tikun. Ubegmar habirurim, at the conclusion of the refining of the sparks. Yis'al shem ban. So now the name of ban, the name has to do with the birurim and biyah, malchus and so on, will be elevated not to the level of ma, but the shem sag shalom mailam and shem ma, to the level of samach gimel. It's higher than the name ma. And here the Rebbe is going to connect it with our parsha as well. That's the idea that Yaakov purchased the firstborn from Esav. Esav is the world of Toyu, as many Amar Chassidus explain. That's higher than the world of Tikkun. That's why Esav is called her older son, her greater son, her bigger son, because he comes from the world of Toyu, which is higher and bigger and preceding the world of Tikkun. But for Yaakov, Yaakov, through refining the sparks, he acquired the lights of the world of Toyu. Now, what's going on since Yaakov did it till Mashiach comes? But now it says that Esav hated Yaakov, that an upset and some type of anger remained in his heart. Though it says that Esav kissed Yaakov in Parshas Vayishlach, there's still their dots on the word Vayishakeu, like Rashi explains, he didn't kiss him with his entire heart. That's an indication that Toyu and Esav were not entirely refined yet, not yet elevated yet, and that's still our job, to elevate and refine the sparks of Toyu and Esav. Mashiach comes at the conclusion of refining the sparks. That will be the older one, the greater one, meaning Esav, will serve the younger one, meaning Yaakov. Not like it says that he didn't kiss him with his whole heart. He'll be completely faithful and completely sincere. He is because he'll be totally refined. That will be the ultimate ascent. Even the darkness that's higher than Seder Ishtalshalos, Yitzchak, Yor Lamato, will shine down here. So therefore we can call Yitzchak our father. Let's conclude the Maimer. The moon is like a point. On the day before Rosh Chodesh, it's completely concealed. Like we said before, this concealment is not a negative concealment. It shows on its higher level, it's higher in revelation. Concerning this, it says in the Haftorah of Machar Chodesh, which says Vayomer Yonasan David Machar Chodesh, that Yonasan told David HaMelech, tomorrow is Chodesh. David represents Sfiras HaMalchus, David Melech Yisrael. Yehonasan goes on the level of the Sfiras higher than the Malchus. Ki Yehonasan Oisius Yud Kei Vav Oisius Nasan. It's the letters Yud Kei Vav. The last Hey is Malchus. Yud Kei Vav goes on all the Sfiras before Malchus. Yud is Chokmah, Hey is Bina, Vav is the 6 Midas. And then Oisius Nasan, and the letters of the word gave. Yonasan gives to Malchus. And that's what it says, that Yonasan said to David. That's coming down from the Midas and from the Spheres of Atzilus to Malchus. Through that, it becomes Machar Chodesh. The result of that is that instead of it being now dark, it's now illuminated. It becomes Hamshacha of Rosh Chodesh. until the Hamshach is in such a way that it says about Yonasan and David that they kissed each other. This indicates the great flow and love that is not grasped in letters of speech. In other words, when a person can't express his love, so he kisses the person instead, because that's beyond the limitations that speech places on this. And then it says, that Yonasan and David were crying one with the other. What's the idea of crying? If you have such a great revelation, why are you crying? So it wasn't a negative crying. It was tears of joy. This is similar to what we find by Rabbi Kiva. That his eyes were running tears when he heard the secrets of his teacher Rabbi Lezer on Shir HaShirim. These tears were tears of joy, because the powerful revelation of these great secrets that he couldn't contain. When a person can't contain themselves, is overwhelmed by something, that's when they cry. So the great secrets that Rabbi Kiva heard, he couldn't contain himself and he cried because of that. The same thing, because the great revelation that came down from Yonasan to David, from higher than Malchus into Malchus, to bring to the level of Reish Chodesh and so on, because of that they cried. Amram calls Malchus. All this is Ashba from Midas and the spheres of Atzilus into Malchus. Last page, and afterwards it concludes Ad David Higdil. It says until David was Higdil. Higdil means became great. What does that mean? Malchus is the growth in the sphere of Malchus. That now, like we said before, that Malchus will grow higher in the Midas. It won't need to receive the flow from the Midas and the spheres above it. Just the opposite, that Malchus will be the crown of its husband. But this will also be understood. The different expressions used in the Sheva Brachas. Initially it says, the one who rejoices, the chosin with a kala. Afterwards it says, he rejoices the chosin with the kala. The first expression, that means that the joy is really in the chosin. And the chosin is the one that gives over the joy to the kala. In other words, the kala is lower than the chosin and has to receive it. Imakala means that they're both on the same level. The kala herself will be joyous. The idea behind this is what it says, that he rejoices the chosin with the kala, they'll be on the same level. It's referring to Mashiach's times. That's why in this bracha we say the sound and the voice of the chosin and the voice of the kala, that also the kala herself will have a voice. At present, by the chosin, the kala has no voice. She stands silent. She doesn't indicate yes, no, maybe, whatever. She's completely not doing anything. She is complete makabel. But when Mashiach comes, she will have a voice as well, because because then the kala, the level of malchus, will not need to receive the flow and influence from the chosin, the spheres above. Therefore we say he makes rejoice the chosin with the kala, that the kala herself will be joyous. Even more so. Through the kala, it's just the opposite, that the kala gives the simcha to the chosin, because the woman of valor will be the crown of her husband.